You're looking at a classic example of a social media photo that probably spread like wildfire and was seen by all the wrong people. For us, it's also an example of how mobility is key to mediated communication and representation today. Think for a moment of how our emails zoom from one corner of the world to another, or how, on Twitter, articles in our feeds could have passed between thousands of people before reaching us, sort of like a ginormous chain letter that never stops growing. In this not-so-flattering photo of what looks like drunken bridesmaids gate-crashing a rave in UK bushlands, who knows who could have seen it? And it doesn't really matter if the photo's been untagged or not. It was still out there and could still be out there. Charles S. would say it's greased. In other words, like all digital content, it's hard to pin down. But this photo also raises another important issue inextricably linked to the mobility of information. How information online doesn't go away very easily. In this lecture pod, I talk about some of the big problems associated with how information online can potentially stick around forever. By the end of this lecture pod, I hope you'll have an opinion about the implications of greased information online for our privacy. Like I said, information online sticks around for a long time. You don't have to be a great detective to easily dig up some dirt on someone. Bingle's skydiving chimp could probably find out a thing or two while waiting for his quote to process. For example, I spent 10 minutes searching your names using Google, and this is what I came up with. I saw a photo of a student in a toilet. Not dodgy, just weird. I saw a picture of a student in a sailor's outfit, but the tabletop dancer kind. I read a student's CV that had his home address and phone number and grade point average. And I know what another student bought his girlfriend for their anniversary and how much he says he loves her. Okay, this isn't true, and I didn't find out these things, but I'm sure I could find something similar. But the point is, everyone probably has something they wish wasn't online anymore. Online, information is greased. It is slippery, evades our grasp, and is always on the move. As a result, something you don't want out there anymore is hard to get rid of, like the drunken bridesmaid's image. A great place to start a more serious analysis of the implications for our privacy of greased information online is a legal case in the EU called Google versus Gonzalez. The gentleman in the picture that you can see is Mr. Gonzalez from Spain. In 2004, he was successful in requesting that Google remove links to some archived newspaper content. The articles announced some information related to Gonzalez that he argued is no longer relevant. And since it's not relevant, he said, I don't want it turning up when people Google my name. Fair enough, right? Gonzalez stated, quote, I was fighting for the elimination of data that adversely affects people's honour, dignity, and exposes their private lives. Gonzalez's success means that a precedent is now set for people to request that Google removes links to online content they want others to forget. Of course, all sorts of questionable people have been requesting that Google remove links to their content, notable examples including convicted child pornographers. And Google isn't happy either about the practical issues involved with dealing with all the requests. And free speech advocates are similarly quite annoyed about it, claiming, quote, the European Court failed to balance rights to privacy and personal data against freedom of expression and information. Criticism aside, Julia Powles, a lawyer and journalist for The Guardian, notes a more positive effect of the Google versus Gonzalez decision. She argues that the case effectively identifies the importance in society today of autonomy and forgiveness. In a recent article, quoting University of Chicago professor Eric Posner, Powles asks, don't we value as a society the chance to make mistakes and move on from these mistakes? Isn't it important we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves? Isn't this what privacy is? And isn't this a kind of basic right? For theorists like Powles and Posner, Google versus Gonzalez is a step in the direction of making Google, quote, more harmonious. And that's because, with the Google versus Gonzalez decision, we have the opportunity to be forgotten online. So for us, and in terms of this lecture pod, we've arrived at a big question. We understand that information online is greased, and we get that there may be stuff floating around online that we don't like. This is a consequence of mediated mobilities. And we know too that a precedent has been set, and where it may be the case that you can't remove the content itself from the web, you can apply to have the links leading to that content removed, at least in the EU at the moment. Gonzalez makes clear that this is something that can happen now. So the big question is whether or not this is a good thing, and who decides what links can be removed. In other words, quoting the EU judges, what is inadequate, irrelevant, or no longer relevant or excessive in the light of the time that had elapsed? Personally, I believe we should be allowed to reinvent ourselves, and some things we do should be allowed to be forgotten. And I think the internet needs to reflect this. What do you think? Thanks for listening.